feel like it's important to say, like, you really can lead from whatever seat you're sitting in, and you can help move the business forward in big ways, even if you don't have the title.
How do you recruit and retain happy agents? I'm on a mission to answer that question by talking with the unsung heroes that empower real estate agents. I'm Seth Price. Tune in each week as I sit down with back office heroes to learn what's working and what's not. Emily, welcome.
Thank you.
Super excited to have you. I have been a huge fan of what you guys do at the Wemert Group. You know, I mentioned to you before, I've been very curious about all of the behind the scenes stuff that goes on to run this very complex machine, which is called a brokerage, and support all of the varied personalities and skill sets and experiences that happen to be agents to make a machine work. You walk into the desk when we could do that in a brokerage, and it seems so orderly. And then as you get into the industry, you're like, oh, there's a lot of chaos going on and a lot of infrastructure. So I want to talk about that.
I really appreciate you having me on. Those are my favorite subjects, besides, you know, the how, not just the how to put that all together, but how do you keep it together and how do you make it look smooth for those that are coming into that space so that it looks effortless, even though, like you acknowledged, it's definitely not.
Can you start by telling me a little bit about the Wemert Group, sort of how big you are, how many transactions you guys did in the last year, all that kind of stuff?
So we are an independent brokerage out of Orlando, Florida. Last year, we served 114 zip codes down here, served 930 families. And so it's a lot of families, and we're a small but mighty team. Right now, we're about 64 strong. Okay. About 45 or so of those folks are in the field and serving clients in that capacity. And then the rest of those folks that are a part of that number work in our office. And so that includes like full-time transaction managers, which we call client care coordinators, because I don't like the word transaction being in an email signature. So it's all about taking care of the people for us. But full-time client care coordinators, full-time marketing department in-house, leadership structure in-house, a compliance manager, CFO. So lots of key roles that keep all of those pieces and parts moving for the agents that are serving all of those families in the field. We have a lot of agents that have been on the team with us more than 5 years, 21 actually, or 25 that have been on the team more than 5 years. 21 of them produce over 5 million a year individually, which is unheard of for a team. So we're very proud of not just our retention, but the fact that agents can come onto the team and be incredibly successful under this umbrella of our brokerage.
Is that one of the measurements of success for you in the retention space? Like, are there other KPIs that you use?
As a whole, we are striving towards team goals. So we'll set like a, hey guys, let's, this year we want to break 1,000 families and serve over 1,000 families together. You'll hear a lot of we language in our KPIs because it's about, doing it together. And what is success to maybe one agent is completely different than what's successful to another. So it would be slightly unfair to compare someone who wants to serve, 60 families a year versus someone who wants to serve 24 and have a different lifestyle. And so don't like to pit the agents together or against each other, I guess, for those types of things. So for us, it's retention, it's profitability. Like, are we running a profitable business? Can we afford to continue to grow with the heart rate? And are we taking care of people? So, our staff, like, are they cared for? And do they feel like they are valued in their seats? And do they feel like they are a part of building this with us? Like, those are the things that matter to us at the core.
And when you think about supporting the sort of the folks that have been there for longer periods of time and the newbies, do you have different playbooks?
So I feel like that's an ever evolving question and playbook in our world. We, for a long time, grew very slowly and very sustainably. So the playbook wasn't as important because you'd bring maybe like one person in or bring the next person in, and we could slow down enough that, you teach them the technology and you teach them the systems, and then the leverage with the staff was kind of preset and in place. And now I find that we're in a new season of quick growth. And it's been that way over the last, little over a year, where we're bringing people in on more of that like regular basis. So we've had to find process, and we've had to slow down and go, what does bringing somebody on that's experienced versus someone that's brand new? Like, how do we get this person up to speed? Like, if I'm going to put words like trusted real estate advisors or trusted experts on a website. I want to make sure that the client feels like this inexperienced or less experienced agent is those things. So it's having the training path for them, and then having the training path for someone who maybe has done this for a long time and has decided to align with us, but still needs to learn the technology and still needs to learn the language, or how do I pass the ball to the right person? And by the way, who is the right person that I'm supposed to pass this to?
What's your process? Like, how do you approach that when after someone's been sort of, I'll say, recruited, maybe that's the wrong word. They've been invited to join and they said yes. What goes on after that?
So we start them off in an online setting, like they have an online checklist, and we say, hey, these are the things we want you to accomplish before day one. And so what I'm watching for, and what our director of agent services is watching for, is can they do the things on the list? It's like step one, like there's the bar. If you can't do things on the list, you can't come to training. So there's a bar, and the things on the list are simple things like making sure their license gets moved over correctly. It's filling out HR paperwork. It's filling out brokerage paperwork. And then it's videos on how do we use our email? How do we use our calendars? Things that we don't necessarily need to spend time in person teaching, and things that they could rewind and pause and go back and take a look. And then for a brand new agent, we run a 2-week intensive class with them. And they come into our space, and we start day one with culture, because for us, everything lives, breathes, is built off of who we are and how we do what we do in the market. Because we do believe that is our differentiator. That is what will set our agents up for success in their relationships with their customers or their clients, or with their vendor relationships, or the co-op agents on the other side of the deal. And then we start talking about database and the importance of really mastering that, because it becomes their gold. We actually announced this morning to our team and new splits for the team, and it was super exciting. We're pretty sure every broker on our side of town is going to be mad at us because we just announced really competitive splits. But we believe that a new agent, while they may need to, we provide leads in our brokerage for brand new agents, should be working towards repeat referral business. And so by that, like year 3, they're figuring out like how to really build those relationships with those beginning clients to keep them and to generate that next relationship from one that's already going very well. And so the splits kind of progressively follow them, but we teach that from day one, so that from the start, they understand the path of, man, if I nurture this database at a high level, it will help me build a sustainable business for not just now, but for my legacy. And so we want to teach them to think that way from day one.
I want to touch on the referral part later, because I know that my understanding is you have a pretty amazing repeat referral stat that you've driven through your culture and your training. I want to go back to the first part that you said, which is, part of the thing they do before they get on is they watch some videos. Do they watch them? Because I always have this, I'm always skeptical on sort of digital education in a certain sense, mostly because, if you look at the e-learning stats, most people sign up for courses and they don't complete them, right? They start and maybe they watch the first 2, but they didn't get to the last ones, or they do it while they're washing dishes, watching TV, whatever it is. Is that a thing you count on?
We have scaled back on what we ask them to do on video from the start, because as a lesson learned, we try to give them, so we give them email, calendar, and like we use Google. So Google Drive, and we say, here's where storage is, and here's where this is, and here's where this is. And we realized that we tried to give them database to start that way. And they would email as a short video. It's like 3 minutes long. Like they're not long videos. It's just the basics. And they would get their email and they would get their calendar. And there are certain marker points for being able to tell, like if they come to their first day of training and their email signature isn't installed, they didn't watch the email video. Or if they come and they didn't see that their training is on the calendar, because we put them into their new system as they're coming through. So we're like, your email is already active by the time you get this email. And so now like their calendar invites are on the calendar for training. And if they don't show up, they obviously didn't watch the calendar video because it's training, right? So it all kind of feeds together for us. But the database video, we ultimately decided to go back to teaching that in person for exactly the reasons that you stated. It was too long and too complicated. And it required a real person and a real voice and someone to actually sort of put the emphasis on the things that needed emphasis.
Yeah.
And for them to be able to put their hands on it, sitting one-to-one with their computers and like push and pull the buttons and ask questions.
There's an analogy to how we think about software and designing software. We need people to do certain things in the software for them to be successful. Like we've seen failure and we've seen success, and people that get success do X, Y, and Z repeatedly. It seems like, at least for us on the SaaS side, is if I give someone one thing to do and the accountability and reminder about that one thing, there's a higher likelihood that they might actually do it, which is interesting. You mentioned something else, which I'm really curious about. When you talk about culture, what does that mean to you? Like, how do you guys talk about it in your sort of, I'll call it leadership org? And then how do you talk about it with the people that you're bringing on?
So the nice part is it's kind of the same. It's just, how it manifests itself might be a little different. And so again, culture for us is kind of the ultimate KPI. Like do things feel good? Do people want to be here? Do people want to carry our message forward? And from a leadership perspective, I've always looked at it as a concentric circle. So if we in leadership are pouring out who we want to be and modeling at the highest level who and how we want this business to go for our agents and our staff. And I charge staff in the next ring. So staff are partnering with us in order to serve the agents at a super high level. Agents are then partnering with, co-op agents on the other side of the deal, or their vendor partners, or the consumer, and spreading that message. And so when we set out to kind of say, how could we quickly define this? Like, how could we set our culture in a way that would be super easy? We came up with a word. We had actually been calling each other this for years and years, even before I came to the team. I've been with the team for 6 years. And they called each other Wemates instead of teammates because we're Wemert Group Realty. And so if you have a W name, feel free to steal. You can be Wemates.
Very cute. I love that.
Thank you. And it meant something even in the early days. Like it felt like a camaraderie piece, and we built into it an acronym. So now when I call you a Wemate, I'm saying it's always we, not I. So we start at the core by saying we served these clients, we did this. It's never I did this amazing thing for my clients. It's we accomplished this amazing thing and we pull our clients into our language, and we pull our vendor partners into our language, but it starts with we. And Mates is, I'll just give it to you quickly, but we're going to be masters of our craft. We're going to be accountable for our actions. We're going to have teachable spirits. We're going to elevate others, and we're going to be solution-based at all costs.
I love this.
It's massive. So when I say to you, like, you're my Wemate, I am calling you to something so much more than just a teammate. I'm calling you to how we're going to show up in the space as realtors, or as, if I'm a client care coordinator, it's how can I be the best Wemate I can possibly be from my seat? Or if I'm in marketing, how can I best represent the qualities of being a Wemate from my seat? And ultimately, as leadership, if we pour all of that out into those concentric circles, it works. And the beautiful thing is now we have vendors that say, hey, it's the Wemates, or we have clients that are like, oh, the Wemate, like it's caught on. And most people don't know it stands for something. Like most people, it's more of an inside language thing, but it gives us something to teach on. It gives us things to highlight. We teach to the behavior we want more of. So in team meetings, our art on the wall, in our business, the way that we address situations when we're accolading someone, like we will point out the qualities of Wemates more often than we probably need to in order to help people remember and internalize, how we're going to show up in this space.
Culture is really tough. I mean, if you think about, I can't tell you how many places I've worked that said they had a culture and they had some nice plaques on the wall, and it just felt icky to work there. And there was backstabbing, and it was like, they didn't really support you. And if you were leaving, they booted you out the door. It's like, it takes a lot of work to build a culture. And it doesn't, you said something that I think is really important, which is you have to repeat the message over and over and over and over and over again with the same enthusiasm that you did the first time you said it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just dissipates.
Well, and you have to model it and live it out. It's not words. It's the words piece that I think often feel empty. We see the phrases on the wall in offices like what you're speaking about, and you're like, man, I don't think that's real. But
Yeah.
when we point out and connect those words to real life situations or real life things that matter, like I spoke on culture at a local event not too long ago. And I
Yeah.
met an agent from a completely different brokerage at that event that I just spent a few minutes talking with. And it wasn't, it was a nice conversation, but it wasn't anything, and I got a card 2 weeks later after that event. And she said, Emily, I met an agent at an open house and he was so helpful and so amazing. And then when he told me what brokerage I was at, I immediately thought of your talk 2 weeks ago. And I just want you to know that your culture and everything you spoke about is real. And I saw it show up today. And to me, that's a KPI. Like we hit the KPI, like that's it right there. And so it's having an agent that owes us nothing, take the time to write the world's most amazing letter off of something she heard over here and then experienced in the wild, so to speak, that brought it to life.
You used a title in describing your team that I think is unique, and you called it a client care coordinator. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Tell me what this role is.
So a lot of companies out there have transaction coordinators or transaction managers. And so people are familiar. This is very similar, but we call them client care coordinators. I'm really crazy about language and about what words we use because I think they really matter and what the clients read. So having the word transaction show up in an email signature is as much in our world as it's normal, and it would feel fine. I never wanted a client to look at that and think, oh man, I'm just a number. Or, oh, I'm just a transaction. They're managing me as a transaction. And so it's even thinking through the little things. Those client care coordinators are, I believe, the best in the business. Like where our agents see, like, I don't know, even the highest producing agents may see 50 or 60 contracts, a year. Those guys are seeing that times 10 because they're the, stopgap for the first point of review for all new contracts coming in. And I have a guiding principle in my world that everyone can lead from their seat, no matter what their title is. And every person should be given the opportunity to grow through some version of leadership. And so the client care coordinators in our world, each are responsible for somewhere between 8 and 12 agents on the team. Okay. And they help those agents, they nurture those agents. They are like feet on the ground, essentially, when the agent's with a client. Like the agents speak about them as their partner in the office. So it's never like, hey, this is my assistant in the office. This is my partner. And the agent will build them up to the client so that the client wants to call the person in the office. And it's leverage for the agent. It gives them time back to go work with another family. But they're all female, so I always default to saying ladies, but those ladies are incredible at what they do. They have a high level of personal accountability towards the clients and to our agents. They are given responsibilities to lead the agents in their seat and guide them into having bigger and more successful businesses. So I always feel like it's important to say, like, you really can lead from whatever seat you're sitting in, and you can help move the business forward in big ways, even if you don't have the title that makes it sound like that's your job.
I love how you have used language. Like even you call the people that are buying and selling a home families. Like the first time I heard you say that, I was like, it felt sort of warm, like friendly and accessible. And like, it's, when you talk about your family, there's a certain emotional space generally that you have, unless you're talking about your mother-in-law or whatever that is.
Hopefully they're great too. I mean,
they are great, great people. But I'm just saying, like, there's generally, if you mentioned, you get someone talking about their family, and that's like a personal relationship. And so I love, who did that in your organization?
I don't know. I think it just sort of appeared naturally, because when you start becoming really intentional about your language, it all starts to switch, and it doesn't take long before others in your organization start speaking like you do. Again, if you get enough people kind of moving all in the same direction. And some of that is just teaching your marketing folks, like, hey guys, be very careful about how we write what we write. And then from there, if the agents are sharing that, they're naturally starting to emulate what they're feeling from marketing. But so it's like leadership down to marketing, down to the hands of the agents or the staff. But families served, we're in constant pursuit of kind of teaching our agents, these are real people. Like this is not a lead, like we call things that almost like depersonalizes. So it's a lead, it's an opportunity, it's a, I don't know, the money phone is ringing. Like, we're guilty of saying all these things too. But I remembering that like, this is a real person who maybe have worked, I don't know, 10 years to make this happen, or something has happened in their world that's causing them to have to leave that thing that is so important to them. And we're there as a caretaker and a guide and we sound very fluffy, I think, at the core of it sometimes, but the heart paired with a lot of grit and a lot of like effort and drive, to me, is where like that magic kind of starts to come together. So it's very fluffy sounding. It's being intentional about being fluffy sounding, but it's also being willing to get up every single morning and go to work and do whatever it takes in whatever season you're in to make it happen for the person or the problem that in front of you that you're trying to solve. And being a Wemate, I mean, I told you, like, you have to be solution-based. You have to be in pursuit of mastery because, again, that's who you're called to be if you're going to be a part of our crew. Yeah. So it's not really an option. Like it's part of who we are.
You, I like your title, but we talked about titles. I'm curious. I wanted to bring that topic up again, which is, I've been, sort of serving the agent community for a very long time and written a lot of content, wrote a book, like it was really geared towards agents. And then had this epiphany, I think, during the beginning of the pandemic and during the pandemic was about the people who do a lot of the work. Not that agents don't work hard, but there's so much infrastructure for folks to be successful. And one of the challenges that I've had is everybody calls themselves something different. Like if you go to LinkedIn and you look for real estate operations or real estate marketing, you might find like 5 people with that title, but there's thousands. And so I'm curious how you think about title. You have the COO title. Tell me about that.
So the COO title sounds important, right? So it sounds, fancy. The COO title for me does open some doors. It allows me to have conversations sometimes with businesses that you need to have that C-suite title to get on the phone or get the right person or get into the right room. Yep. I don't love it because I don't think it totally covers probably all of the pieces that I'm responsible for. So there's that piece of the puzzle. Jenny Wemert and I who's our team leader and literally the most amazing person on the planet. Like she's my work.
I know Jenny. I love her.
Yes, we do. There was a joke for a long time that my title should be like Chief Happiness Officer. And I refused because I was like, oh, that's real fluffy. Like, I don't want to do that. But we've just learned in our world to hold titles loosely. So we teach like there is literally nothing that's not your job. So we had this huge thing in our office today. I emptied the trash because they were full. And it's not my job, but it's my job. Like we do whatever it takes to move the business forward. I do think, to your point, it's really difficult to find the people building the infrastructure because usually they're head down at their desks, busy building the infrastructure, or they're coaching and mentoring and training the other people to build the infrastructure. The titles are very varied. So you find, director of operations, COOs, all the way down to executive assistants. And again, it's hard to figure out because a lot of times their rainmaker or their team leader or whoever it is the face. And it's difficult to kind of weed down and try to identify these folks. I will say, though, that second chair space is a special space. It takes to me, a special leader to figure out how to balance the drive and the effort and the face and the popularity, the whatever of the leader, and to figure out how to keep them in that space and come alongside and add value in a completely different way to the organization. And it's the balance of that world of, it's almost like visionary implementer, but most really great COOs live in the space where they're both. Yeah. And having that balance of when do I need the approval and the like go ahead and the yes, and then when can I run and go do on my own? Like it's a whole interesting world.
Yeah, you used a term I hadn't heard before, second
Second
chair.
chair.
Yeah, no, I love it. Tell me
Yeah,
what
like
I,
second
I think I
chair
understand
leader.
what
I
you
don't
mean.
know, like your face isn't on the window of the building and you're
Yeah,
not like the person that's featured on the website more than likely, but
yeah,
you are more than likely probably right next to your leader and having those difficult conversations behind the scenes of how do we grow? How do we scale? How do
yeah,
we move this thing forward into the next level? And in most, I think, roles of second chairs, it's listening to what the leader wants and balancing what you know about what's working and not working in the systems and figuring out like what's a great idea for now,
yeah.
what's a great idea but it doesn't fit in our lane. Like it's a, to me, your director of ops can be a wide variety of people's skills type. It just depends on what you need in your organization for the season that you're in. But the title thing
You,
is tricky for sure.
yeah, titles are funny. Titles, it's like diplomas and what have you. They mean something and they don't.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me, how did you get into this role?
That is a fun question. So I, for a long time, ran a wedding photography studio and a number of years before I landed in real estate. And I was flying all over the country on weekends and I was a little tired. I had young kids at the time and I was like, man, I'm really tired of getting on an airplane and I should figure out something not to get on, like to do to get on an airplane. And I had built a pretty strong business and I have a wide variety of skills of, head of photography. I managed like a really large creative arts department at a church. So I was used to volunteer management and technology management and marketing pieces of like when I built the photography studio to market for business in the same way that an agent has to market and gain that new client. And so, very long story short, a friend said, hey, I know a realtor in town who's looking for like someone who likes, and it was literally like, you know, those people that when you're hiring, you throw the whole laundry list on the wall and you're like, let's just see if this person shows up like in the universe. I think we
A
all do.
unicorn.
Yes. She literally said, I'm looking for a unicorn. So that was a perfect transition, Seth. But she literally put a post up and the friend was like, I just couldn't get you out of my head. You checked off all of these boxes.
Yeah.
So I met Jenny. It was an instant like kinship for both of us on realizing we could help each other grow. I spent 2 weeks in the field as a photographer for the team. And then very quickly we were like, I think I'll come in and do marketing and hire the photography piece.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah, 2.5 years in that chair and use that season to learn everything I could about real estate. So spent time literally listening to every conversation I could. I've sat immediately next to Jenny Wemert. We share an office and listened
Yeah.
to 6 years worth of real estate conversations at a super high level. And that's a fast track right there. So I fully know, like I've been given a really like blessed golden little like lane right there.
Yeah.
But then spent a lot of time just learning the ins and outs. And then I guess now almost 4 years ago, I transitioned to the COO role. And so now my role really is how do we take the vision that Mike and Jenny, who own the company together, have, and how do we bring that to life on paper? How do we put the systems in place, the technology in place, the marketing pieces in place to not just work for today, but to work for our next season of growth?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to something that you spoke about, which is helping your agents get repeat business, like helping them build a referral business. Tell me about how you guys think about that and what infrastructure you have in place to make that happen.
So I told you we start their training with that idea in mind, so that from day one of training, they're thinking about how can I in the next year or next 3 years go from having 0% repeat referral because they haven't gotten into business yet, or your friends and family may not want to trust you with the largest purchases of their life day one on a new career. So how can I go from maybe 0 to a very small percentage all the way up to at least 50% repeat referral? So we teach, take care of the person in front of you. So in our world, we have a paid lead system that they can put their hand out and they can get a lead and they can plug in when they need to. We teach them not to take too many at a time so that they can spend the time and care for the people in front of them. So right now in this season, they should not have more than like 5 A buyers in their hand. And especially right now, inventory shortages all over. I'm sure most people listening to this are in that same boat like we are. Your job is to get up and look for hidden inventory and try to turn over every rock to find that client. And when you go the extra mile for the client in front of you, immediately it builds the trust and the camaraderie. And then all of a sudden that past client, referral business turns on because these guys loved working with you. They have nothing but great things to say. And now all of a sudden they're bringing you the neighbor and they're bringing you the friend. And so as that starts to naturally happen, you need the premium paid leads less and less because this is turning on. And then if you fast forward 2 or 3 years, first-time home buyers in particular tend to turn up into like move-up buyers, or, a kid goes off to college. And so it's teaching them how to stay top of mind without, being obligated to go to dinner with every client that they have once a month, because that's not the goal either. Like the goal is top of mind without being overly in their lives so that it's, a thing. So as a brokerage, we provide a couple of events a year. COVID has obviously thrown a little bit of a wrench in everyone's last year. So we didn't do in-person events, but typically we'll rent out a movie theater or a water park, or we live in Orlando. So there's all kinds of really, people come here to vacation. So there's, And if you live here, sometimes you don't pay for the things people come here to do on vacation. So like, it's kind of fun to be cheesy and do some of that stuff too.
Yeah.
And we sponsor all of that for them. So the agents can plug in, they get a certain number of invitations for their VIP clients, and they can plug and play those people in. We offer a database focus where they can come into the office and talk with our director of agent services about their database. So what can I do with my database to reach these people or do something sweet for them or what? And then they can plug into marketing to get a tag or to get a thing to like pair or ideas to try to make sure that they can stay top of mind. So it's a balance for us of continuing to teach them good habits of serving the person right here, but B, teaching them to stay top of mind without being overly in their people's space, with a couple of just good value adds during the year to make sure that they can keep those people connected. So by year 3, a lot of our new agents do start to see that 40 to 50% repeat. Our entire business, our 930 transactions last year, we were 40% repeat referral overall, which is, I'm really proud of that. Like we've worked really hard to get there.
That's amazing. I remember when Jenny and I first, I met her and then got an opportunity to like really dive deep in what she was doing at the time. This was quite a few years ago. I don't know if you had joined yet. I can't remember the timing.
Right, no worries.
I remember she was so good at getting client reviews. And I believe I remember you guys had more client reviews than anybody in Orlando. Is that still a part of your mix?
I wouldn't say we have more than anyone, because there have been a couple of agents down here that have they've made that their like one focus, but we still definitely have a lot. The thing
when you say a lot, I didn't look, so I'm not.
Oh yeah, no, you're good. So like Zillow, we're just shy of 1,000 reviews on Zillow. And that was a game we had to play for a long time. And so that was where the focus went. Realtor.com, we have quite a few. Google, we're at like 450 reviews. And
but you're playing for keeps. This is like serious.
Yeah, it's super serious. No. Yeah. Well, and I'm super passionate about client research. So when the client is researching, when it comes time, for a long time, we've all been building these big phone books in our databases of people, but now more than ever, the clients are savvy. They're Googling, they're really asking like, who do I want to work with? Who does the internet say I should be working with? Like, are these people really who they say they are? So they're digging. We had a review come in like last night that was like 3 paragraphs, like a Google review. And I was like, holy smoke, like our clients are taking the time to not just be like, 5 stars. Like they are really selling their experience. So again, that all stems from taking care of the person in front of you. If you will be solution-based and do the right thing every day, the reviews come. And then when people are researching that are just out on the web, they find the reviews and they're like, well, these look very authentic compared to some of what else they see out there. So these guys are obviously like, I love when I see in reviews, I found these guys on Google and their reviews looked good and they are everything that, was prompt. Like that is the best. Like those are unbelievable. That's awesome. But we have focused on reputation. And staying in our lane and trying not to be all things to all people in every space out there, which I think is a big part of our success. and trying to highly leverage the agents so that they can go out and be the best agent that they can be and keep their attention really focused on those 4 or 5 families that they're serving right now.
Fascinating when you think about, I remember, so I was an agent for a few years, more than a few years, I want to say 3.5, during a great time, 2005, 6, 7, and 8.
Oh, no.
Well, I didn't stop because of the crash. I stopped before that. Okay. And I was already making the transition back into tech and working in software. I wasn't prescient at all. The timing just lucked out. But I remember I had no criteria to choose my broker. I just didn't know what I should be looking for. I didn't understand culture. I didn't understand whether they had a focus for onboarding. I mean, my onboarding was I got phone duty. I mean, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
And
that sounds familiar from a few years ago, just for the record. Sure. So yes.
Awesome. So we've got Shayla. Hi, Shayla.
Hello.
So great to have you. Thanks for joining. I know you had a couple of questions. I figured I'd turn it over to you.
I have so many questions. I will try and pare them back.
No, go. This is great.
I just love listening to, like Seth said, all the language that you're using, and especially because your brokerage is where I feel like our brokerage is trying to get to, but with 10 less agents than we already have. So it's really amazing to listen to how you've scaled everything and how it sounds like you've got a really massive support team, which as you talk about profitability, it's hard to try to figure, okay, how did you sort of get to the point where, without obviously talking numbers, how did you scale responsibly with your support team? And how do you get your agents to kind of buy into that and using your systems and doing things your way?
I think those are really great questions, just for the record. And I still am asking myself those questions every So let's start with that. The first is that we scale up early. So it sounds like we're very staff heavy, and we are. Because I know in order to create growth opportunity for agents that are coming in, we have to be ready for them. And when you put someone new in a seat, it takes them time to figure out that seat and really own it well. So for example, I have 5 client care coordinators in seats. I brought a new client care coordinator in this past fall because I had 4 and I was sensing that we were kind of hit like we were talking about hiring. So I was like, if we're going to bring in more agents, and looking at the 4 of them and how crazy their world was last year, it wouldn't necessarily be fair to do that to them again and bring in more agents. So we brought in someone in the fall, knowing that we weren't going to need her yet. And it's been 6 months since she stepped onto the team that she's had time to learn our processes, learn our languages, speak like we do, sit next to enough people. And it was worth the expense because now in busy season, she's fully up to speed and running full steam ahead. And I have space to go hire a few more agents, and I can trust that the system is not going to break. We always used to joke that if someone was, sorry, go ahead, Seth.
No, I was going to say, quick question. Do you model that in your mind as sort of an investment of a teammate?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I've, in my short time in real estate, 6 years, but also in my other life experience, I've watched people give up on people too fast. Yeah. So we bring them into new roles and we want them to be like brilliant geniuses, with 2 days of half training where we kind of sat with them, but we were on the phone half that. It doesn't work. We have to give people time to adapt and learn and make mistakes. We teach people in our business, nothing is fatal. In real estate, everything can be fixed with a little bit of time and probably a little bit of money, but it's fixable. So it's okay to make mistakes. We'd rather have you trying and moving the pieces forward. But we hire early on purpose, knowing they're not going to be up to capacity so that, again, when it's time to scale, it's there. And so that the agents can trust that we've done this the right way for them. So our agents are, to me, our best source of recruiting the next round of agents, because when they're happy and they love the brokerage that they work for, it shows up. And when you're working with co-op agents on the other side of your deals, and they see the difference, not just with the experience with your agent, but also they're like, man, you guys have this dialed in. Your client care coordinator's got all the pieces wrangled and they're helping me. Now, all of a sudden, it's bringing value to somebody outside of the organization who says, I want that. I want to be a part of what you guys are doing. So the recruitment piece, which I know is a never ending conversation in the real estate world these days, I don't we're kind of lucky that we don't have to do a lot of it because the people
to-
want to be a part of it. And now that we don't have to recruit, we do, but people want to be a part of it.
I've got a question that is piggybacks on what Shayla said, which is if Shayla you sit next to Jenny and she sort of makes I'm assuming one of the final decisions, right? It's sort of like I report to a CEO. I can have all the ideas. We can have all the ideas. Ultimately, the decision gets made there. Would you recommend that Shayla make the argument that the early investment is worth it?
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that question.
How do you frame that argument in a way that makes sense to someone who's used to looking at a P&L?
Yeah, I think you have to explain it almost like we're talking about, like, hey, and I think you have to show that it can be successful. So like Shayla, I would even be happy to take a call with you and we could talk through this because there's all these little nuances, right? Of like, yeah, we can do that. But being able to be brave and be willing to say, hey, I have this idea. I heard about this on a webinar, but I just want to run this by you. And it is obviously working for this team in Orlando because they've scaled up to 930 units and they have this crazy amount of retention. So maybe it's worth looking at and saying like, there is some validity to making sure that the agents can trust these processes and these people we're asking them to partner with. And because of that, and because we know it takes time to get these guys trained up and in their seats, we may need to think about scaling up. So every 6 months, could we have a conversation where you and I meet together? So be you and your team lead or your boss, and you would say, let's look at what does growth look like for us for the next 6 months? And if we were to get to where we want to be, are we ready for it? Mm-hmm. Or what would it take for us to get to that picture together? So if your goal is to grow your marketing and you have an in-house marketing person and they're at capacity like it is going, you're never going to get to that dream picture of what you want from them in 6 months if they're at capacity right now. So it's stopping and going, is there something that they're doing that could come off their plate? Could we do that a different way? Could we leverage that? Or is it another hire? And there's lots of argument to be made for lots of different ways or paths to go on that. There's not like a one size fits all. We just realized in our world that the more we could leverage the agents, it does a couple of things. Number one, it keeps them more interdependent on our model. So from a broker's perspective and for like a retention perspective, the agents relying on those client care coordinators or relying on marketing or relying on the fact that the lead, machine, for lack of a better word, just keeps ringing, provides them a lot of peace of mind in their business. And they're much more willing to stay put in that seat because they have support at all those different avenues. So it's worth the expense of the person who can captain that seat because it builds the trust with the agent, which keeps the retention, which ultimately leads to profitability. Because as they scale their businesses as agents, the profitability gap continues to widen because they're bringing in, again, repeat referral business. They've got the past client database at that point that they're building the continued relationships off of.
And I imagine you've got a lot more control really over how those processes go because you have everything in-house, because that's something that we've struggled with is figuring out, well, what makes sense to create a strategic partnership over here with this other company who's already doing this versus what do we keep in-house because we're able to, it's that trade-off of having control over the process and knowing it's going to be that higher level of service. So I love seeing how you guys have been able to do that. And like I said, with your sales volume, it's obviously paying off.
Well, and that's, again, those 6-month questions. So if you meet right now and you say, okay, what are we doing right now out of house? And look at the cost analysis. So like photography or marketing is a perfect example. And you have a trade-off of cost, but you also have a we've had in-house photography for a while. We literally just moved seats around and I kept our photographer because he has other gifts and talents and we can put him to use in a completely different version of a space. But working in the job and in the field, he did not have time to go out and be like, what's next in real estate photography? He didn't have the learning space because he was doing. So what we've done is we've said, let's keep the person on the bus because he's amazing and has other gifts. And we've not promised, but we've said we care enough about the people to keep the people in place. But then let's go strategically hire this other thing out of house because now we're hiring a company that's accountable to the dollars that we're sending them. And now they have to dream up what's next, and they have to figure out how to keep us ahead in the realm of photography. And what's working right now, if I turn around in 6 months and we have this conversation again, we may go, well, that was the worst decision we've made. Let's bring that. I don't know. Like you never know. So it's being strategic about slowing down. I do think it takes the leader and that like second chair, or even just anybody in any seat, because it can be anybody. Like I was a photographer who stepped into marketing, who kept asking questions and taking pieces. That's all it was. And it's just asking like, what are we going to do in the next 6 months and how do we get there, practically speaking?
Shayla, I think you had another question.
I did. Yeah. Like I said, I have all the questions, but no, the one other in particular that I was wondering about, kind of unrelated, but in talking about agent retention, it sounds like you have a really great onboarding process for your new agents, and a great training program and videos and all the wonderful things. What do you do for agent retention for your more experienced agents, and what kind of training is available to them?
That's a really great question too. So M is mastery in Wemates. So if they're going to be masters, I feel accountable to continuing to put tools in their tool belt at every given step, no matter whether they're just starting or experts. So Tuesday mornings, we meet every single week and we do a team meeting. And you can't tell an independent contractor, it's mandatory. So we're like highly suggested. And we purposely bring value to those meetings. So that is not the time to bring in 700 vendor partners and have them give their pitches or their spiels. It's the time, which I know we all feel guilty about this because we all do it. So it's fine. But we use it as a time for mastery. And I have a hard start time and I have a hard end time because I want to respect the agent's time. And so they know I need to be in my seat, ready to go at 9:00. And we've been on Zoom this last year for our meetings, which has been hard. Everybody else has been in that world too, to keep the focus and the attention. But we do an hour and a half and we do trainings. And it's on whatever's happening in the market. It's on, it could be on something small, like, hey guys, we're focusing on this. And so we bring in people to teach on it, or we teach on it, but it is an hour and a half every single week. And your players in the room that know the things can elevate your conversation. Yeah. But you also need to bring in people that are thinking as big as they are and or bigger to help them feel like they're getting that feed of knowledge. It also reminds your newer folks that there's a lot to learn, and that's okay. As long as you're also feeding them on a different level, it's okay. And then Mondays, we do something called Monday Mastery. That is a Zoom meeting. It'll stay a Zoom meeting even when we're back in person. And it is a specific topic. Typically, we pick a focus for the month, and it's an hour on Monday mornings for anybody that wants to show up on Zoom. And it's led by Jenny Wemert, who's our team leader. And so the draw for our team is it's like small group time with Jenny. And they love that. And she's a teacher at heart. So it gives her a chance to teach things like contract knowledge, or this coming month, we're focusing on Sphere, because again, we just announced these new crazy splits for everybody where they're now 90-10 on their Sphere, in order to drive that, again, that repeat referral, all the way up. We want them to have the benefit to build that legacy piece in their life. So we're going to focus this month on how to build more business for your Sphere. And that will be Monday mornings. And then once a week we do, every other week on Wednesdays, we do what we call Listing Frog. I don't know if any of you have seen that book, Eat the Frog. That's all about doing the hard thing first. If you have to eat the frog, it may be gross. So eat it, get it out of the way. And this is an every other week meeting for anyone who carries listing inventory, and anyone is able to sit in on this meeting. And literally first thing in the morning, look at our inventory and we look at the data, and we teach our agents how to read data. So how many people have looked at this? How many people have favorited this? How many people have rejected this? And why is this important? How do you talk to your seller about these numbers? What are we doing to market this home? What else could we be doing to market this home? And in this season, we have 5 active properties. So they're very short meetings compared to when we used to carry 50 at a time. But those meetings help elevate the conversations. I feel like I fast tracked through real estate through those meetings. Yeah. Because the conversations are upper level. And so if you're a new agent, that's your chance to listen in and really gain and hone those skills. If you are an experienced agent, you're in the room with other experienced agents talking listings. So Monday Mastery, Tuesday is required, and Wednesday. So Wednesday, Monday are optional plugins for folks that want continued support and education. That was a really long answer, Shayla, but hopefully that gives you a good picture.
No, it's really helpful. It's interesting because I feel like, you do have that struggle of trying to kind of speak to everyone because you have agents at different levels or even doing different types of business. Cause like the area we're in Hunt Country in Virginia. So you've got people closer to DC and then you've got people in the mountains. So it's all different types of properties. So picking topics can be difficult, but focusing on contracts, it sounds like, obviously, I mean, that applies to everybody, whether they're new or experienced. So it sounds like what you're bringing is a lot of value. And like you said, not necessarily just vendor calls.
Well, or pair another agent in those conversations. So it's not always Jenny leading. She'll tap like a top producer and say, hey, come teach this with me. And now you're elevating your top producer. And then your newbies are like, well, I want to learn from, in my world, like Corey Welch or Tony, because they're doing 60 deals a year, or they're helping, X amount of families, and I want to be like them. And so using your top producers as a draw into those meetings. And I wouldn't start with 3 meetings a week, like start with 1 and get everybody on the same page. And that is a time to teach culture. It is a time to use your language, time to, what's the good stuff going on, guys? Like I used to start almost every meeting with like tell me something good. And we just get it from the room. And occasionally I'd plant it. Like our job is, again, leaders from any seat. Like I'd say, someone would tell me a story and I'd say, hey, on Tuesday, when we say, tell me something good, please share that. Like, it's so good. And our job as leaders is to nudge people into doing the things we want them to do. So if Seth tells me that Shayla is amazing, I'm going to be like, Seth, have you told Shayla that she's amazing? Like, go tell Shayla, or put it out on the team page so that Shayla can see it and get the props from her. But we're just nudging each other. And that works for me.
Got it. Shayla, you are amazing. I do know this.
It works. Yeah, thank you. No, that's great. That's really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Those are great questions, though, Shayla. And we continue to ask those questions ourselves, truly.
This has been a fantastic conversation. And I love that you shared everything that you shared. What's the one thing you would say someone new to being in ops that they should take away?
Ooh, I wasn't prepared for that one. I think the first is that it's really easy to want to go all the directions at one time when you're new in ops, because ops people tend to think in solution mindedness. So they want to fix all the things or change all the things. Just take a breath and watch and really ask, why does this work this way? Why are we doing it? How long have we been doing it this way? Is there a reason we do it this way? And start getting that picture drawn of like, okay, this connects to this. If I change this, what else is this going? And get a really clear picture of who you are first. Yeah. And then from there, get with your leader or your boss and say, okay, I have a good handle on who we are, I think, and how we're connected. Where are you really seeing this thing growing to? Or can we work together on that? Because sometimes leaders don't have clear pictures, or they don't know. Yeah. They're like, I don't know, just more success. And that's fine. That can be the answer. But getting like those small increments, like we were just talking to Shayla about, of like, is it recruiting more agents? Yeah. Is it fixing some processes, and setting those like small actionable like goals for a timeline? I literally, like, I just kept taking pieces, like, let's build a new buyer seller book. Let's do this thing. Let's fix the website. And you just keep taking, and then all of a sudden you realize the whole thing is running around you a lot smoother than it was before you started taking the little, but it's small actionable the pieces in order to build a really smooth working whole. And then the moment you think you have it smooth, something breaks, because that's just the nature of the universe. How it works. So yes, keeps it fun.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and we will connect again soon. I promise.
Thank you, Seth. So nice to speak with you.
Yeah, you too.